goes on within forensic services, and I think it was particularly positive, and it was really pleasing to see how the event went down with the staff that attended, and it's so important for us to recognise the good work that is undertaken across the organisation. During the Excellence Awards ceremony, it was the ideal opportunity for us to launch the new forensic services branding. Whilst we've a few niggles to work out with the backdrops on our Microsoft Teams background here, we do have the new branding that is now launched, and it will be rolled out across forensic services and with our partners on a no-cost basis. So it will be rolled out over time. I'm also very pleased to have attached as an appendix to my report today the first annual review that Forensic Services has completed, and this highlights some of the important work that was undertaken across Forensic Services last year, and is a summary version really of the longer annual report that we produced and reported to the last meeting of the Forensic Services Committee. So I will pause at that point, Chair, and open to any questions.
Thanks very much for that, Director. I thought the annual review, I really enjoyed reading that, and I thought it summarised a lot of the highlights of the work that you and your team have done over the last year. So yes, well done on that. The second well done is in the memo of understanding. To finally get the ink and the signatures is a major triumph, because that's been hanging over you for quite some time. So I'm just so pleased to see that that's over the line. I'm also pleased that the work has started on the replacement roof at Howden Hall, and I just want to get some assurance from you that contingencies are in place to make sure that the work is still, as best as possible, able to proceed there, or if it needs to be done somewhere else. So can you give us some assurance that talk a little bit more about the contingencies you have in place to work around this?
Certainly, Chair. If you don't mind, I'll bring in our Head of Forensic Infrastructure and Support, Alan Connell, to give you an update on that.
Welcome, Alan.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, so the works were initially, they've been planned through Italian Service and a couple of other subcontractors that they work with. It's planned closely with our people that work in Howden Hall, so it's my own team from business support, operational support, and also from our toxicology people that work there too. So there's a full scope of works that have been planned and prepared. It's been fully discussed and agreed with our own people that work on site, and we're just working around to make sure service isn't disrupted. The works have commenced. It seems to have landed quite well. And I'm not hearing any concerns at this particular moment in time, but it's something which we are monitoring closely, because we had hoped to get the works in and around the summertime. So if we're starting works at the beginning of autumn isn't great, particularly with the issues that we've had at Howden with regards to the kind of infrastructure and the kind of roofing that we've got there. But I'm confident that the guys at Police Scotland can deliver it, and having spoke to the contractors, we seem to be in a good place.
Great. And do you know roughly when it will be finished?
It should be early part of next year, so the target date is the end of February, early March.
Oh, good. Great. Super. Any other questions or comments? Caroline?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Fiona, for your report as always. And I really just want to add to the comments the Chair has made, really, by saying I think the performance report work is superb, and I know it's an awful lot of work, and hopefully over time we'll be able to keep on refining that. But I just want to say great job. I love the new branding, so I want to say great job there. And also, finally, as I have banged on about this relentlessly in my time here, the MOU, I think that's great, because that's going to be essential for us in our sort of operating model going forward. So well done to everybody for getting that over the line. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions or comments for the Director at this point? Mary?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your report, Fiona. Very interesting. Lots of good material there. I just wanted to say that I think it's great that you've inaugurated these Excellence Awards, and I'm glad that the first one was a big success. If these become annual events, hopefully I'll be able to join you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and absolutely we intend to do this annually moving forward, so we'll be very happy to invite you to next year's meeting.
Super. I'm going to move us then on to the next item, which is item 3.2, the Forensic Service Performance Framework. And again, I think you're leading on this, Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. So I wasn't anticipating giving too much of an introduction to this paper. The performance framework itself has been to the committee previously, and the updates that have happened since then is it really in relation to the addition of the targets within that document. So we have had an opportunity within the workshop to talk in some detail around the targets. So really the purpose of the paper today is to bring this first version of the performance framework to the committee for approval, and thereafter it will be subject to an annual review and update in line with the development of the forensic services strategy. So I'll pause, and I'm happy to answer any questions or ask Vicky Morton, the Chief Operating Officer, to also jump in and answer any specific questions in relation to the targets as set out in the document.
Yeah, now we've had a good thrash over this at the workshop, and it does reflect a lot of what we were looking for. Do board members have any questions they want to ask in the public meeting about the performance framework? No. So this sits above the performance markers. This is kind of the coat hanger, and the performance markers is things that you're hanging on that to try and conjure up an image. So, and yeah. So there's been a lot of work done in this over the last 9 months, but particularly in the last workshop, I think, for the benefit of people that we managed to colour in some of the detail here. So we're asked to approve this today. So just to reassure the public, we've done a lot of heavy lifting on this already. So can we agree this then, the performance framework and the recommendations in that report? And then that moves us on to the actual performance report, which is item 3.3, and that's the Q2 performance report, and it's Vicky Morton that's going to lead off on this. So Vicky, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is obviously the revised performance report for forensic services, which looks at Q2 of this financial year and really captures all the activities, hopefully, across all of the organisation, and really builds on all the fabulous feedback and again from yourselves, particularly at that deep dive session. So first I'd like to just go through initially the executive summary, which is on slide 3. So as has been reported previously, last year's performance was exceptional, very good in terms of that overall picture, and really we're building on that this year. And Q2 has shown us that broadly we are in a very positive position with a good balance between demand and capacity across the organisation. Obviously, as we know, timeliness is one of our challenges, and you can see that later on in the report, particularly around the areas of scene examination, firearms, volume crime DNA, and some aspects of toxicology performance. And again, there's more detail later on in the report. Obviously, just to link in with that, the whole ethos of our new operating model is to really focus on that investment and that timeliness aspect, particularly around more volume crime activities. So we do acknowledge that the scene examination incident response is slightly lower than we would anticipate, and we would obviously like. The target is 90%, and we're sitting currently at 79% attended within a 24-hour time since we are requested to attend such incidents. Timeliness has been impacted by high levels of abstraction, particularly as we move into the new ways of working and we embed our new scenes tasking unit, which only went live in April this year. Performance in drugs driving toxicology analysis, which will be covered later by Alistair Patience in his report under agenda item 3.4, has improved significantly as the year has progressed, and that's already been mentioned today in the meeting. Performance of Section 4 and Section 5A drug driving casework is exceeding the target of 90% for this quarter, 6%, sorry, for this quarter, which is really exceptional in terms of performance of the team. There is continued improvement in the post-mortem toxicology service. Again, you can see that later on in the report, with the turnaround times for priority cases now being routinely met within the unit. And the concentration now is really on that non-priority casework, but we're seeing a significant improvement in that area already. And again, I'll come on to that later. Also included in the report is aspects around the balanced scorecard and our performance framework. And again, they're broadly on track in relation to the targets as set out. So it's hoped that this revised performance report, again, we intend to build on this as we have further committee meetings and further discussions, and we'll look to see this improvement in the coming months. So looking at slide 4, which is the balanced scorecard summary, as you will see from this, everything is really in a very positive position, good position, everything either on track, completed, or being managed. And that covers all areas of customer relationships, finance, people, and internal business processes. The next two slides, slides 5 and 6, cover the performance framework, which obviously has just been the previous agenda item. And again, all are on track, green, or being managed and monitored. That's amber in terms of our scoring. In terms of the amber activities, absence rate, we'll talk about that later in the people-related slides, the operating model and compliance with our plans, that will be covered by Joanne Tierney's report in agenda item 5. And obviously the rest of the report really covers the performance data, which you can see on slide 6, which has been highlighted as amber at this point. The next set of slides, slides 7 to 12, cover our people. And the first slide, slide 7, covers people from a health and safety perspective. So what the data tells us is that we have a positive health and safety culture across the organisation. It's very well embedded, really strong governance arrangements in place there. Our staff are encouraged to report accidents, near misses, etc. And there are no significant trends that we can ascertain from the data that we have, and also no RIDDOR reports. I should say also that this data covers Q1, just because of a timing aspect, Q2 data is not yet available. The next few slides cover absence across the organisation. Slide 8 notes the number of working days lost as a percentage across the overall organisation, and it is above the target and our stretch target that we had agreed within the performance framework and in that deep dive session. We've also seen that there has been an increase in COVID-related absences over the last period as well. It is also important to note here, for this slide and also the next around long-term sickness, that often that not all absences are actually attributed to work-related issues, and then maybe other activities there that are causing that absence. In terms of slide 9, if we look at short-term absence, and long-term absence as well, we can see that our long-term sickness is increasing, but our short-term absence is decreasing. We manage absence across the organisation on a case-by-case basis. We have a lot of support from our P&D colleagues within Police Scotland, other activities such as Employee Assistance Programme, Wellbeing Champions, etc. So absolutely everything that is looked at on that individual basis, looking at the needs of our people across the organisation. In terms of long-term absence, they are within the various areas of the business, including scene examination, fingerprints and firearms. It also should be noted as well that a short-term absence is a period of time off work up to 28 days, and then it moves into that long-term absence category. We can see from our data that the absence categories in terms of the reasons why people are not at work, the highest of those, the most frequent, is around psychological disorders. And you can see that on slide 10, and then in a little bit more detail in slide 11 of the pack. So overall, there is a reduction in psychological absence across the organisation, but it absolutely remains a real focus for us. We've talked previously about some of the initiatives, such as the psychological supervision project that's ongoing at the moment. And it's really important as well in terms of our new line managers that have joined the organisation as part of our new operating model implementation, to really have that focus on looking after our people. Then if we move on to slide 12, which looks at the age profile, turnover, ethnicity. In terms of age profile, a good balance really there. There are some perhaps areas where we need to take a bit more cognizance of and look at that in a bit more detail, and that's ongoing internally. And again, really high retention rate there as well.
Sorry, where is the ethnicity in this?
The ethnicity data is, there's a line at the bottom of the right-hand side text
yes.
box. So it's 1% of our workforce have identified as being from a Black, Asian or ethnic minority, a minority ethnic background there.
Okay, thanks for that.
So that's the people-related data, which obviously was raised as an action in the Forensic Services Committee action log. Now moving on to slide 13, we have business plan compliance. So, excuse me, so as you'll recall, about 2 years ago, in October 2022, the 2-year business plan for Forensic Services was approved by the committee, and all are again on track or completed, with the exception of one, which relates to the ICT infrastructure. And really our passion and drive to be more paperless, have instrumentations networked to really improve the efficiency of our organisation. And it really highlights here the importance of our new core operating system as a replacement for our current case management system, which is relatively inefficient for our purposes. So as I say, mostly on track in terms of the business plan. Moving on to slide 14, quality compliance. As you're all aware, Forensic Services have, again, a really positive quality culture across the organisation, with accreditation to the international standard ISO 17025 been in place for over 20 years now. Most recent addition to our scope of accreditation to call out is alcohol analysis within PM toxicology. So again, just highlights the external scrutiny by our accreditation body UCAS in that area, while we were in the midst of method validation and setting up of the new site in Govan. We are at the stage now where we're in the middle of our annual assessments by UCAS. They're currently ongoing, and it's a significant amount of effort for both UCAS and our own staff in relation to those visits. Also, just to call out, our new scene tasking unit and new ways of working went live. The tasking unit went live in April, the new scenes ways of working in June this year, really to ensure that we have a national consistent process. We have the right people with the right skills attending the right scenes. That was an investment of about 13 new roles in our organisation. The tasking unit is based in Dundee. It is very much early days. It is really looking at improving the triage process and making sure we're reducing that failure demand, where we could potentially have been attending scenes which had limited or no forensic value. So there have been some teething problems, I would say. As I say, it's just new in terms of our organisation, and just really in relation to that timeliness for our staff attending scenes. So that information is being investigated, being looked at, and being resolved, and will obviously that feedback from our partners' perspective will be included in the post-implementation review, which will be reported back to this committee in February of next year. Also, to point out from a quality perspective, we have had a number of instances of positive feedback as well, including a number of cases that are ongoing, which we can't obviously speak of in this public setting, but one in particular in relation to the murder of Amber Gibson, in terms of very positive feedback on the work of forensic services. So moving on then to slide 15 and service delivery. And slide 15 shows the demand and output overall from a laboratory activities perspective. And you can see that there are monthly variations, as you would anticipate, for demands and our outputs as well. On the right-hand side, you can see our overall caseload, which we're sitting at just over 5,500 cases. And again, on the right-hand side, you can see a pie chart which denotes the timeliness aspect of that activity. The majority of the case work is within due date, so that's sitting at 78%. However, 22% are overdue, so they have passed that initial deadline. What I would say here is that these are often internal measures negotiated with our partners. Much of this work is police investigative work as well, so it's not entered the court system as yet. Obviously, our real focus is on improving that timeliness, particularly that substantial improvement required in police investigative work, and that is really aligned to our operating model and implementation of the changes that we have agreed previously.
Can I ask, does the memo of understanding, the way that it's all separated out into the different priorities, does that assist in that? Is that 22% because it was what was happened before with the memo of understanding, if you know what I mean?
The MOU sets out clearly the timescales and the priorities, and absolutely aspects where we need to negotiate, where we need to escalate any significant issues. What I would say, just in relation to the overdue casework there, that there is no risk to statutory time limits not being met in terms of the police investigative work here, that this, the majority of which will cover.
Yeah, now where I'm coming from is you've now got an understanding of what their needs are, a very clear one. It's down in black and white, what both partners that we're working with, because you're kind of the meat and the sandwich, or the cheese and the sandwich, between Crown Office and Police Scotland. Okay, yeah, okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. If we then move on to slide 16, which looks at an overview from a scene examination perspective, the number of requests and the number of attendances at scenes, it's interesting to see that they've both decreased in September. So we're working with our Police Scotland colleagues to understand that in a bit more detail. And as I've said before, the new scenes tasking unit and the triage process, by removing that failure demand, by really focusing on non-added value scenes and cancelling those activities, it's having a positive position within scene examination and impact there. On slide 17, this looks at the timeliness KPIs overall. And again, you can see here it focuses on 7-day custodies, Crown Office timeliness targets and Police Scotland. And also in here, we've included the scene attendance KPI. We've called out drugs driving in particular as well, and also post-mortem toxicology for the first time. The latter covers priority turnaround times. So what we can see here is that looking at this, the improvement has been seen from the previous quarter. So last quarter, we had 3 red, where there was issues that needed attention, and 1 amber, where issues were being managed and monitored very closely. And this quarter, that picture has improved to 2 red areas. Just looking at those 2 areas, if we go down to the Police Scotland Priority 2 delivery requests, There has been an 11% improvement since the previous quarter, but it is still looking red, and there is a real area for improvement there, which we are working on. What I would say there too is it very much links in with our operating model and the improvement plans there in terms of those longer term aims to reduce the timeliness of this kind of middle area of work, less priority work. Also to call out, the scene attended within 24 hours of request. It only has just moved from amber to red by 1%, a change there. And again, we've seen that already. I've mentioned the reasons behind that. And as you can see, drugs driving sitting at 96%, which has been a massive increase and improvement there from the previous quarter, which was sitting red and has now moved from red to green. And similarly with post-mortem toxicology and the priority turnaround times, which is providing results to our partners within 28 days. So we're now sitting, again, moved very much from red, 92 days in the previous quarter to 25 days and green. Moving on then to, I'm sorry.
Well, this just to say we'll discuss drug driving in more detail in the next agenda item, just to flag up to board members. We'll give it attention there. But I think the post-mortem toxicology performance is significantly improved. And as you know, it was something that exercised the committee very much at our last committee meeting. So I'm very pleased to see this improvement.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Chair. If we then look at slides 18 to 21, this looks at demand and capacity from a crime group perspective rather than within our the KPIs from Police Scotland, COPFS, or from internally in terms of our areas of business. So broadly, we are in balance there, but I think a few things to point out here is that we really want to focus on sexual crime, group 2, on page 18 of the report. We can see that we're seeing that increased demand, and we have done for some time now. Also toxicology, which is covered under mainly traffic offences. So this is our drugs driving, which is group 7. Which is on page 21 of the report, and also drugs as well, which is covered under other crime, which is group 5, which is shown on page 20. So we really want to use this data, but delve into a lot more detail with our partners on that forecasting piece. What does the demand for forensic services activities look like over the next 5 years? So we are setting up a short life working group to really drill down into that, and that will help shape the next version of our strategic workforce plan, which we have shared at a previous forensic services committee. So Chair, that's the main body of the report, but obviously we're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Victoria. Board members, do you have any questions? Mary.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yes, thank you very much for that. That, you know, as a new member of the committee, I found that really easy to follow. So thank you very much for that. I think it was helped by attending the workshop. Couple of points, and maybe something that I'm just not aware of because of my lack of experience in this area, but on page 17 and again on page 24, we see cases where something which is described as priority 3 has a much higher performance than something which is referred to as priority 2. And so I just wondered, you know, what happens when you see that, and particularly where there's a pattern of that. So on slide 17, Police Scotland priority 3 delivery requests are green, consistently well outperforming the target, but priority 2 delivery request consistently red. So I just wondered how that, you know, a bit of an explanation of that and what you do that you would address that.
Yes, thanks, Mary, for the question there. Yes, P2 requests sometimes depends on what type of cases are in that category. It's very much built on a timeliness aspect here. We have been looking at this in a bit more detail and we want to do some further work here. And one of the aspects we have noted is that there may be, just because of different ways that we've looked at performance previously, there's perhaps been a drive to get the easier, quicker, smaller cases, which often sit, depending on the area of the business, but often sit in that P3 category. They also tend to be easier from a forensic analytical perspective and reporting perspective. So again, we want to really try and get into much more detail as to why that is the case. Also, we have noted that it can be because of our EMS system. And if you have multidisciplinary cases, so they go into different areas of the business, if the first area misses that initial internal target, then it has a knock-on and makes the other areas red. So we're doing a bit more work on that just to understand it in more detail and then take the necessary actions to address.
Okay, thank you very much, Vicky. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Katharina.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Vicky, for the report and for the presentation. Just to agree with Mary, I also find this report very easy to follow, and thank you very much. I felt it was quite comprehensive, and I like the fact that it's a proper balanced score sheet approach as well, that it looks at more than just one area of performance, but it takes this really quite holistic perspective. Mary did ask one of my questions, which was around exactly the categorization, so that saves me that, which is perfect. And Vicky, you did touch on another area that was just right at the end of your presentation, which I'm quite interested in, which is that forecasting element. Because performance reports by their very nature tend to be retrospective looking, quite obviously, but it's the forward looking piece that's really important to us as well. And particularly, so I'm really pleased to hear that there is this governance structure that's being set up to look at that. And from my perspective, I would be particularly interested in making sure that as an organization we really understand the underlying assumptions that go into those forecasts, so that's quite transparent, because I think that's where the value would be, for us to have kind of a view of these assumptions. And again, that is quite holistic, so that it looks obviously at any regulation that's coming down the pipeline, et cetera, but also, looks comparatively and possibly looks at some wider factors as well, such as changes in socioeconomic factors or anything that might somehow have an impact on the demand. So I'm really interested in that piece, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the output of some of that being presented to the committee. There is really a question and just a comment, I'm really looking forward to it, so thank you.
Thanks. I think it's important as well that work ties into with the work that we're doing with SPA Corporate about horizon scanning. And again, absolutely, as you say, Katarina, that forward thinking, other factors that need to be taken into consideration as we develop our organisation for the future.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Katharina. I've got a couple of questions before we move the business on. So first one is in regards to performance with firearms. So it's quite a low number, but there's still reds there, and I understand there's still significant challenges with staffing. Are there any risks with this in terms of missing deadlines of prosecutions or anything like that? Or are we okay regarding that?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So page 26 of the report gives you that detailed aspect around firearms, and I would say no, there are no risks in terms of anything in that point of view, Chair. We very much work with Police Scotland and COPFS in terms of our prioritisation, making sure we're working on the most important, the correct cases throughout that workload. And yes, you're right in terms of some of the numbers are low there. We have been looking at the resourcing within the area, and we are currently recruiting an additional member of staff in that area to assist there, because we're wanting to anticipate any future challenges that may arise. And also just to call out as well around the new and innovative work which this team are doing, particularly around 3D printed guns, etc. And that takes a lot of time. So again, this is a reason why we have looked at recruitment in this area. But from your original question, no, there's no risk there.
Great, thanks for that. It's just an object lesson that it's when you've got lots of small teams, even a little bit of people missing for one reason or another really has a detrimental impact on performance. We just have to be careful there. The second question I'd got was regarding criminal toxicology, brackets excluding drug driving. So, and again, it's why is the performance so poor for this?
So Chair, as you know, and members of the committee know as well, toxicology has criminal toxicology has a lot of different kind of aspects. It's very much a small team who deliver from Howden Hall, whether it's drugs driving, drink driving as well, which is included in this data. In terms of road traffic offences and also other areas of criminal toxicology. So that has been a challenge for us, trying to balance through one small team all those different areas of activity. But I would say that we are showing improvements in this area, and the focus is now very much moving on to these other types of criminal toxicology activities.
See, sorry, carry on.
Sorry. Outsourcing, we've looked at this as well, as you know, and we're very much working with Police Scotland in terms of the prioritisation, and our Crown Office colleagues as well in terms of prioritisation of cases. But it is an area where we do want to see a significant improvement in the coming months.
Yeah, it's just that I'm looking at a reference to drink driving casework performance remains strong at 100% for Q2, but I don't see 100% in these. So this is drink driving plus other stuff.
Drink driving plus other types of toxicology activity, yes.
Right. So the other stuff must be way below.
Stopping the
way
performance.
Below.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Great. I'm not sure I've got any other questions in the performance report. So any other questions from anyone? Alistair, you were wanting to come in, or?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to assure the committee members that there's no risk to any court dates, trial dates or time bars with any of these cases. In terms of criminal toxicology, as Vicky had said, we started with the drug driving activities, improvement in drug driving, moved into drink driving, we had the same improvement there. And now into the other toxicology work, and you can see the improvements there in Crown Priority 2, and we're anticipating that these will continue month on month, excuse me, going hoarse.
Okay, thanks for that. Caroline.
Thanks, Chair. And Alistair has just got in with my question, so that's perfect. So thank you for that, Alistair. And I guess I've only got one more question. So, and also just to add to colleagues' comments, Vicky, I think this report's excellent. And I think, you know, as we go, we should be trying to streamline this a bit more, because we don't want to create an industry out of producing this every month, because I'm sure this takes an awful lot of time. So we'll see what we can do in terms of automating as much of this and simplifying it. But I think, you know, great job, really, honestly. But my question really is around the sickness absence. And it was really looking at the trends, and when I was trying to sort of pick up the short term was declining, but the long term was increasing, it kind of looked as if they were kind of increasing and decreasing at the same rate. So I'm just wondering, do you know roughly of the percentage of people that go off short term, how many of them convert into long term absences?
Off the top of my head at this point, no, but it's something definitely we can
Surely
look
not.
at.
Surely not, Vicky.
I'm quite sure that 100% of long-term sick were short-term at one stage.
Yes, we were. Yes, because there is that tipping point, as I said, and day 28 moves from short-term into long-term. Of our staffing levels, we've got 19 people sitting at long-term sickness absence at this point, and as of today in 23 short-term. But again, there are quite a range of different reasons, as you've seen in the previous data set as well, around the reasons for absence. Yeah.
I just wondered, it's just in terms of trains, if people are off short term, then go back to work, or is it short term and then they're converting into long term? It's more those trends I'm really looking for. How quickly are people coming back as opposed to then tipping into long term? But thanks for that. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for that. Thanks for all your questions, everyone. I'm going to move the business on to the next agenda item, which, if you give me 1 second, is 3.4 drug driving update. And I believe, bear with me, that is Alistair Patience. So, Alistair.
Thanks very much, Chair. So, as usual, I'll take the paper as read and just draw out some of the key points. As members will recall, the service for drug driving is currently based on in-house and outsourced provision. So the outsourced provision has been facilitated using funding which has been agreed with the Scottish Government, and that has continued since the last update to the Forensic Services Committee. In addition, as planned, the number of cases that are being outsourced has reduced as internal capacity ramps up as a result of the toxicology development plan. In terms of our outsourced work, the profile and the projection is seen in the graphs below point 2.6 there. And a couple of points just to mention there, that the provider is increasing capacity through significant investment in terms of capital expenditure and staffing. They're ramping up in terms of equipment purchases, validation and introduction to casework. But as you can appreciate, Chair, that's not an immediate thing and takes some time to do. So all being well, that will mitigate against the slight slippage in terms of the forecast plan being 85 cases behind. A couple of reasons for that. There was an increased level of court attendances for our outsourced partner, and then some authorisation was delayed beyond what was expected. So we are also exploring other improvement opportunities with our outsourced provider, and regular meetings in terms of casework review also continues. Moving on to page 4, the position regarding cases that could not be progressed to prosecution has improved significantly over the position from last year, as you can see in the MI mentioned previously. As highlighted previously, if the statutory time limit reverts to 6 months from December this year and impacts cases prior to that date, there could be significant implications for time barring of at least 300 drug driving cases, but the indications are that that appears unlikely. In terms of Q2, 96% of Section 5A cases have been reported internally within 3 months of receipt, and 94% of Section 4 cases have been reported internally within 4 months of receipt, and these are huge improvements over the historical position. In terms of investigative casework demand, the various months are there. Oh, sorry. The various months are illustrated there. Sorry, I'm not sure who that is, Chair.
I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback from someone. If you could mute your mics if you're not talking, that would be helpful.
Thank you. And on page 6, drug driving case aging there, which includes the time from submission, gives an illustration of the improvements seen. On page 7, the volumes for outsourcing are illustrated there up to the end of September, and the projections are that that will tail off towards the end of the financial year. On to page 8, illustration of the in-house caseload there, maintaining a stable position and confirmation that there's no cases within 10 weeks of statutory time limit, which is a fairly consistent position now. And I think that was probably all I want to draw out in terms of the report, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. I've got a few questions to kick off before I maybe invite other board members to pitch in. So if you just bear with me, everyone. Sorry, I'm abusing my position as the chair, but what the hell. So the first question is, 2.6, you make a reference to overall reduction in internal caseload, more manageable level, has a positive impact on staff within the team. That's great. And the number of hours of overtime has remained consistently low from a historically high level. And I'm not sure if we're still playing catch up with this, why that's seen as a good thing. I would have thought we'd want to sweat the asset, for want of a better description.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it's a good question. So I can assure members that although there's less overtime being worked, the team are certainly working hard to improve the position. My concern, my worry previously was with the high levels of overtime being worked, that it may tip over into increased sickness absence. But I'm happy to confirm that that's not the case. But I can certainly assure members that the toxicology team is certainly working hard.
Okay, that's good to hear. The second is, where are we? 2.10, so consideration being given to outsourcing for next year. Can I ask, firstly, do you know how much that will cost, and do you know where the cash will come from?
That's a good question there, Chair. So we're not entirely sure what level will be required at the moment. We're just looking at the internal development work that's required and seeing what we can do to maximise or optimise the benefit there. Based on the development activities that are still required, there is likely to be a request for some outsourcing, funding for outsourcing, if the level of demand tips over what we have available in terms of capacity internally. And in terms of funding, the funding request would be going to our colleagues in Scottish Government, Chair.
Okay, and the next question is regarding Scottish Government. We've got any idea of where we are regarding the long-term sustainable financial model for this area of work?
Thanks very much again, Chair. So in terms of the long-term sustainable model, there's been a lot of dialogue with Scottish Government and colleagues, excuse me. As a result of HMICS, that makes some recommendations in terms of longer term forecasts and prevalence of drug driving out there in the community. So it's likely, I would suggest, as a result of the recommendations in there, that there will be further iterations of long-term sustainable model required. So at the moment, that will be developed.
And
Thank you.
Fiona Douglas wanting to come back on this as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I'll give Alistair an opportunity to have some water. Yes, absolutely. The long-term sustainable model is influenced by a number of different factors. So an awful lot of work has been done in terms of options, and we've had tripartite working groups and discussions with Scottish Government previously around this, in fact, for the last few years. As Alistair says, there's a couple of recommendations within the HMICS review, particularly around strategy, also particularly around education and prevention activity, which we would expect to influence what the future demand levels might be. But there remains a high degree of uncertainty around what the future level of demand might be that we would be seeking to service from an analytical capacity perspective. So we will continue to work with Scottish Government colleagues around next year and what funding might be required around outsourcing for next year, and then how we get to a point where we can develop a full business case for the long-term sustainable model around a reasonable set of options. But there's definitely a need for discussions with Police Scotland colleagues to refresh what the future demand might look like, as well as understanding internally what our future toxicology strategy might be, which is something that we're currently partway through within the organisation, particularly how we see some of the benefits around post-mortem toxicology and criminal toxicology working together more over the future, and then how that will influence the amount of internal available capacity that we will have. So there's a few extra competing and complex factors that need to be brought together to refresh that long-term sustainable model and to convert that into a full business case.
Okay, thanks for that. The next question I've got, Alistair, is 2.15, and it's just there doesn't seem to be any section 4 data for October. What's the story with that?
So the report, I think, was taken where the data was just up to September, Chair.
Yeah, it's got
Apologies.
October for combined total and for section 5A.
Yeah. Apologies. I'll see if I can get the numbers. Let's see. In terms of 5A for October up to current date, I think is. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong graph. Sorry, I'll need to come back to you on that one, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Lastly, just a couple of observations. You've got financial implications. It says there are financial implications, but it doesn't say what they are. Personnel implications, it says there will be personnel implications, but it doesn't tell us what they are. So what are the personnel implications of this report?
So personnel implications there in relation to recruitment of staff associated with the forensic services operating model, Chair.
Right, and how many?
So the recruitment is already in process. So that's 4 forensic analysts, and there's 1 capability team manager. And the financial implications are in relation to outsourcing and the staffing associated with the operating model.
Right. And the recruitment, that is to increase the staff size. If that's the case, that will obviously torch this as a problem, hopefully. But it's to replace, it's to increase the staff, not replace people that have gone. So, Fiona.
Yes, so just to be absolutely clear, Chair, the full business case for the operating model for forensic services increased the resourcing within criminal toxicology for drugs driving of 4 posts, as Alistair said, and a management post. And that allowed us to sustain the current level of demand for drug driving. Yeah. We know that the level of demand that is required in the future is far greater than this, and that's based on a change in Police Scotland strategy with regards to the rollout of the roadside testing and then the subsequent increase in demand that we would expect. So the investment that has been made, that we've made through delivery and self-investment from efficiencies within the organisation, that allows us to be able to service the current level of demand. So it doesn't resolve the problem, and it doesn't address the root cause of the issue that resulted in the cases unable to progress to prosecution, because that related to levels of demand over and above the capacity within the laboratory. So this is where the long-term sustainable model that we've just discussed is absolutely critical in terms of understanding how in the short term we use outsourcing as a lever, providing we have funding to support that. But in the medium to longer term, we need to make sure that we've got a sufficient analytical capacity to be able to provide Police Scotland with the service that they need.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. Does anyone else have any questions on this? No? Okay, thanks very much. I'll then move the business on, and if you give me a chance to check my notes. The next agenda item is Forensic Services Financial Monitoring Report, which for Q2. So again, that's you, Fiona Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. I will take the paper as read. The high-level summary of the financial position for forensic services is that from a revenue perspective, as I touched on in my opening remarks, the Q2 forecast is 0.4 million underspend against budget at this particular point in time. The reason for that really is around the recruitment falling behind the targeted assumptions within the budget itself. There's a number of reasons around that, some of which is delays in the recruitment process itself, but also given the complex organisational change which we're going through within forensic services just now, quite a lot of the posts that we are advertising are being recruited internally, which is really positive in terms of staff progression. And I'm really pleased to see a significant number of staff in forensic services promoted into new posts within the organisation, be they management or scientific posts, which is great from a career development point of view. However, it does then create further vacancies that then need to be filled. So the recruitment process is taking longer, and I'm in discussion with finance colleagues just in terms of how we do the budget build for next financial year to take into account account what the recruitment timeframe should look like in normal times as opposed to through organisational change times. But at the moment we are seeing that well behind budget. From a capital perspective, again, we are at this point in time through the Q2 forecast showing a forecast significant underspend in capital purchase of around about 800,000. It's currently under review in forensic services to look at how we can deal with some of that underspend. Once we have completed that review, we'll be in contact with Police Scotland finance colleagues just with regards to what we expect that final forecast position to be, and therefore any funding which we would expect to free up to Police Scotland colleagues around capital purchases across the wider organisation. The reason really for that capital spend is around slippage in projects. I think there's a substantial piece of work for forensic services to do to look at how we can improve our capital planning process, and we have had a number of discussions about how we can improve that process internally to bring some more grip, I think, internally just around how we plan and approve capital spends within the organisation to make sure that next year we are delivering against the agreed budget for capital that we have for forensic services. So, Chair, I'm not proposing to go through any of the detail which is set out within the finance dashboard, but I'm clearly happy to take any questions in relation to the financial position.
Any questions from any of the board members on this? Can I ask about the underspend in reform funding? Is there a danger we could lose any of that?
No, I don't believe so, Chair. I think that the reform funding for this financial year has there's been a bit of miscommunication, I think, in and around some of those areas. So there's no risks in and around the reform funding spend position compared to where we should be at this point in the financial year.
Okay. And we then note this and move on to the next item, which I think is Mr. Naylor, or it's not Mr. Naylor, it's Mr. Naylor's report, but we'll get Mr. Naylor in, I'm sure, in due course. So where are we? HMICS Assurance Review of Forensic Toxicology Provision. So it's you, Fiona Douglas.
So thank you, Chair. I'll introduce the paper, and if we have any detailed questions, I will be asking Alistair Patience to come in and support in regards to that. But the paper sets out a more detailed action plan based on discussions that we had in the last Forensic Services Committee. It sets out the action plans which have been agreed across different partners that have a responsibility to lead in each of the recommendations that were raised by HMICS in the review. The table shows a colour status for each of the recommendations. I would point you to the end of that table to find the key there. But you can see of the 25 recommendations we have.
Yeah, just at the end of the table, there's a right. Great, thanks. Because RAG status to me means red, amber, green, not purple and blue. So I've been very confused by this.
Progress status. So
Right.
there are 3 of the recommendations that are complete or have been submitted to HMICS with a recommendation for closure. So that's for HMICS then to review and to determine whether we need to provide further evidence on those. We have 10 where there is good progress towards completion. We have 11 that are on target and under management control, and we have 1 which is with Scottish Government colleagues where we'll need to complete the action plan for the next report. So overall, I think really good progress and some really good momentum across all of the organisations that are involved in leading on closeout of each of the areas. We have the Strategic Oversight Board that's been established and has had an initial meeting which will look at pulling together this report and reviewing progress moving forward, as well as being an opportunity for any escalation that's required. But at this point in time, I'm really pleased with the progress that all of the different partners are making in regards to the HMICS recommendations. And I think given it's still fairly new from having received the report, an awful lot of work has been done across the board in terms of addressing the important issues that the report raises and in making good progress in resolving some of these matters.
Great, thanks for that. Mr. Naylor, do you want to pop in here at any point? And is there anything you want to add to this?
Thanks, Chair. I would agree with Fiona. There's been a lot of very good work done to this point. We are still working with Alistair and others to make sure that the evidence provided is actually targeted at the recommendation rather than just a long list of things that are being done. We, as a team, went through most of the updates tail end of last week. So Fiona and the team will start to see those being populated onto egress today. To be honest, I think the update of the MOU will close another recommendation off, so that will be a very welcome move forward. I'm really pleased that that's happened. What I would say that there are some things that we will push back on a wee bit, particularly around the I think there's recommendation 2 about a robust process in place to identify emerging strategic drivers and legislation. There is a new process in place, particularly on environmental scanning, but it is very much focused on environmental scanning. And what we would be seeking is some form of transparency and consistency in agenda items on minutes, etc., around the legislation being considered and changes being considered, because the meetings have been happening, but there's no consideration of things like the human rights legislation that is being looked at just now. There's no consideration of other bits of legislation that will have an impact on forensic services. So that for me is a framework exists, but it actually needs to be tailored a bit more tightly towards the recommendation that we've made for it to be signed off. So in general terms, Chair, we are encouraged by the progress that's being made. We do remain a touch concerned about outsourcing for next year, but that's already been covered in this meeting, so I'm not going to go into any more detail on that. We would be keen to see maybe a wee bit more detail on the performance reporting about expectation levels of service delivery in this space, along with what can be delivered by the outsourcing. And that's the bit that I don't think we have been, or certainly we've not seen the evidence of what that will look like going into the next financial year. And that's what I thought I wanted to cover.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, super. Any questions from board members on this? To say, I think the progress we're hearing about is very welcome, and clearly there's still a lot more work to be done in this, but I think the direction of travel is very encouraging, to put it mildly. Okay, super. Thanks for that. I'm going to move us then on to item 5, which is the Forensic Service Change Programme. Thank you. And again, bear with me, sorry. That's Joanne Tierney. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the report has been submitted and I'll take it as read. I'll just call out a few highlights. The programme, Forensic Services Change Programme, continues to track green for the majority of key milestone activity. However, we've got some issues that emerging issues that are being closely monitored, but none are tracking red at present. We've had some helpful discussions with Police Scotland's colleagues around some resourcing challenges that are being resolved, so that's helpful. In terms of where we are, we have obviously our new national tasking unit, which continues to embed and starting to deliver on the benefits as predicted with that programme. We've got centralisation of our resource for attendance at fire scenes, which has now been consolidated from the Scottish Crime Campus, and this will allow us to build our capacity for a faster response time. We have successfully delivered on phase 1 of our operating model people plan, with the majority of our staff now working to their new role profiles and the successful integration of our new layer of first line management in the form of our capability team managers. We've successfully transitioned manual DNA processing from Aberdeen and Edinburgh laboratories, freeing up opportunities for more efficient batch processing at our Glasgow and Dundee sites for our manual DNA. the initial management development training program for our capability team managers, which was an in-depth focused management development plan, is now complete, but is now being developed to be rolled out to our other management roles for both new people transitioning into management roles, as well as our existing managers around how we're going to approach a people and performance focused management culture in our new operating model. The development of our core operating system program business case continues to progress with Alan Connell leading on that from the business perspective, and we are on track to develop that FBC by the end of the financial year, particularly looking at the affordability and deliverability of that project in its entirety. We have with several projects, the access to the laboratory and the deployment of scene examination, they have now moved into the post-implementation review phase. We have completed a post-implementation review report for access to lab, which is currently with our portfolio assurance colleagues in Police Scotland for their comment and some follow-up activity. But really, we're going to be able to move those forward into the benefits realisation, and I've given an indication of the benefits realisation plans and our management framework in this report. Attention in this area is very much focused on a visual dashboard to bring back to the committee, which will demonstrate how we are tracking, monitoring and managing the realisation of those benefits as we progress through our change programme. The report also contains project updates in terms of the RAG status for each of our projects. As I say, our access to lab is moving into that post-implementation review phase. We've had some very effective post-implementation review discussions with both our partners in Crown Office and Police Scotland, which identified some areas for quick win to really capitalise on the benefits, but our Police Scotland partners have been very positive in terms of the release of ours, etc., from operational policing delivered by the streamlining of the process and the removal of duplication in activity in terms of form completion, etc. Deployment of scenes, we have formally completed the end project closure report, and as I say, we've started those workshops on post-implementation review. We've got a really exciting opportunity with this project to set up a really robust benefits realisation tracking and monitoring process to demonstrate that. I'm very excited about moving forward with that and being able to demonstrate the success of that to the committee in future reports. Data governance, again, at a really exciting phase with this project. We've been some time in the requirements gathering, making sure that we are completely aware of where our data is and compliance levels for our data. And now we, having engaged with our portfolio and portfolio management colleagues in Police Scotland, have all agreed that a business justification case is the most expedient way to move forward into the delivery phase for that project. So really excited on getting started with that now that we have a real full picture of where we are. Operating model, as I say, we've continued to prioritise our people plan. Obviously, we've had some challenges around the budget allocation in terms of moving at pace to the full operating model. So we've prioritised activity in that area around getting to steady state in terms of our new management structure and really embedding those management roles. We've also made some significant progress in terms of workflow planning and mapping out the 2B process for that. So albeit with a phased implementation approach as it reflects the challenging financial picture. Development opportunities for our people, and we've also really been encouraged by the enthusiasm with which people have taken up recruitment opportunities that have been involved for internal development, and we have had a number of members of staff moving into their first management roles and starting their management journey, which will really support our succession planning as we move forward, taking into account our strategic workforce planning and all of the good work around that area. I have included as part of the report the high-level programme plan, which I hope will provide the transparency and assurance to the committee in terms of where we are with our key milestone delivery targets. And I will leave it there and open to any questions.
Thank you for that. Do any of the board members have any questions at this moment in time? It's a very comprehensive presentation. Mary.
Thank you very much. I don't have a question so much, but I wanted to recognise the reference that was made to the development opportunities for your people. It's really encouraging to note that 58 staff have already taken up those opportunities, with 26 becoming first line managers. In an organisation the size of yours, that's really very, very noteworthy. So well done on that, and hopefully that continues.
Thank you.
I think that is very significant. I've worked in organisations where progression was virtually impossible. So this is really, really good to see. So it's very good for staff morale as well, that they know that there's a chance of moving onwards and upwards. So great. Okay, thanks for that, Joanna. I don't have any other questions myself. So we'll move then on to the next item, which is the 10th anniversary of the Forensic Services Cold Case Review Team. And we're joined by Louisa Thau and Amanda Pirrie. And apologies, Louisa, if I pronounced your surname wrongly. So you're introducing this, so welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and that's perfect. That's exactly how you pronounce my name. Thank you very much.
Grand.
Thank you for the opportunity to present some of the paper that Amanda and I have pulled together. I'm hoping that you've read it. I will assume that you have, so I'll just point out a couple of things. Amanda's on the call as well, so you can field any questions to her when I've finished speaking.
That's the right attitude.
There are several reasons why we gathered the information in the paper that we've presented today. The main reason is obviously the upcoming 10-year anniversary of the creation of the team, which is in November, and the opportunity that gave us to showcase the incredible work that we, alongside our partners, have completed in the last 10 years. We also felt that it was a good time to take stock of our progress and achievements and to look for some areas of good practice or development that would help the service going forwards at this milestone juncture. We're mindful of the huge body of work that's gone into the change programme that Joanne has spoken about, and we were keen to propose that the cold case team was positioned appropriately within the new operating model to ensure future proofing and to facilitate any proposed expansion of the team. The remit of the cold case team aligns very well with the refreshed SPA strategy, which I'll cover in a minute. Our collaborative casework with our partners, Police Scotland and the Crown, has received a lot of media attention recently in the form of documentaries such as Murder Trial, that's recently been on BBC Scotland, interviews and published articles. And we've got several cases just about to go through court in the autumn. So the time seemed perfect to pull this document together. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of points which were key for us. The importance of the partnership working between SPA, Police Scotland's Homicide Governance Review Team and the Crown Office, which allows us to progress the right cases at the right time. The expertise that SPA can offer to the investigation of a cold case through both our mainstream evidence types and the more niche skills that we can offer from the Aberdeen lab, such as hairs and fibres casework. The support network we've built through our relationships with our internal lead scientists and externally via Amanda, who can expand on her role, but that allows us to follow best practice and keep up to date with all the latest developments. The volume of cases that we've progressed, over 70 in the last 10 years, spans the whole of Scotland and internationally, which is it's worthy of note as well that these cases can often take years due to the complexity of them and the subsequent intricacies to getting them ready for court. The new technology that we've either brought online in the last 10 years or we intend to provide in the near future with the support of the new Research, Development and Innovation team led by Dr. Ben Mallender. The headlines relating to our successful convictions in cold cases, but also the impact that we've had when a case has been satisfactorily closed without necessarily a conviction. The opportunities we've highlighted in the document to expand the remit of the team into historic unsolved sexual offences and the review of unexplained deaths and long-term missing person inquiries. And finally, how closely the team ethos aligns with the refreshed forensic strategies, such as providing high-quality forensic services using innovative approaches, driving forward the implementation of new technology, promoting exceptional customer service, working collaboratively with our partners, very important, and to maximise the value of forensic science by designing future-focused services. This describes the cold case team very accurately. The Forensic Services Cold Case team has demonstrated its worth and success in the last 10 years. We've honed our products and our service and added significant value to the criminal justice system. There is much more that can be done to enhance this added value service that we provide alongside and for Police Scotland and the Crown. And there is most definitely the enthusiasm between not just Amanda and I to do so. So thank you for your time. That's my summary of the paper. And if you have any questions, Amanda will be pleased to answer them for you.
Thank you. Amanda, is there anything you want to add at this stage?
No, I think Louisa's done an excellent job in summarising, basically what the team have been progressing in the past 10 years.
She has indeed done an excellent job on that. Any questions from board members or comments? I have to say this is hugely important across the wider justice system, because the success of the cold case team basically means you don't get away with it, that at some stage you'll track them down, and science improves all the time. And another board I sit on is stacked full of ex-coppers, and they always like to say at some point you leave your footprint on a crime scene if you've done something. And this is very, very true. In the past, how many crimes would be solved if they had DNA in the 30s, 40s and 50s? Well, they had DNA, they just didn't have a way of measuring it, of tracking it. So yeah, I think it's hugely important that that this work is carried out, and your headlines just speak for themselves. So I've got Katharina first. So, and then.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Louisa, for presenting. Again, just to echo what you've just said, Chair, I also think it's fascinating. It's incredibly important, and I think sometimes there is this kind of. There can be the sentiment of, oh, well, it's a cold case, and it's constrained resources, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But actually, also as the previous Chief Constable has been pointing out in his reports, wherever there is a crime, there is victims, there's families, there's people that continue wanting answers, and that closure element is so important. So, yeah, it's not a luxury to have it. I think it is a necessity to have this type of function, and it's just the fact that over the last 10 years there has been this progress. I just would really like to commend it. So I really enjoyed this update. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to get Suzanne in next. I'll maybe give the last word to you, Fiona.
Thanks, Chair. And again, it was just more comments rather than questions.
Yeah,
just
that's good.
Expressed from a Police Scotland point of view, having worked with Amanda and the team very closely in some of my previous roles, absolutely, it goes without saying the complexities that are involved in these inquiries are phenomenal, and the amount of resilience and patience and effort from the team goes unnoticed sometimes. We wouldn't be able to get some of the convictions which we have over the past years, and what lies behind that are the families and the justice for the victims and their families, to know that they've not been forgotten. So again, just to express our thank you.
Yeah, it's very true. Fiona.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Louisa, and thank you, Amanda, for coming along and presenting, Louisa, so articulately a summary of the report that you bring to the committee today. I think this is an example, Chair, of some of the exceptional work that is done across forensic services, and particularly within the team of scientists that have been working on cold cases, which has cycled through a number of different scientists as we've gone through the previous 10 years. So some really exceptional work across the organisation, led by Louisa in particular, but has some of her other SDM colleagues prior to that. So I think it's delivered some really exceptional results. And with Amanda in her role and the expansion of that role within the new operating model, I think we have an opportunity in some of the more live major investigations to apply some of the particular skills that Amanda has brought to major crime over the previous years. So I think this is an area where there's lots of learning, and I think Lou's highlighted through the report some specific areas in relation to cold cases, but this is a key tenet of the operating model moving forward, and we'll be working closely with colleagues to realise the benefits of that. But just finally from myself, I think this highlights the benefit of public sector forensic provision, and particularly the way that we have forensic science organised in Scotland, in that we have all of the forensic disciplines under one roof. And that really does show its power when we look at the application of that model, that multidisciplinary approach within the investigation of cold cases, but also across major investigations that we see all the time. And I think that really shows in the results that we are seeing. So thank you to everybody that's been involved, and also to our colleagues in Police Scotland and the Crown that really deliver the outcomes to the public of Scotland in this area. So thank you.
Great, thanks for that. And last word definitely to Ruth McQuaid.
Thank you. I'd just like to endorse what everyone has said already. I don't want to repeat it all, but I could just take that as read that on behalf of the Crown, yes, we are very much indebted to the professional services provided. And so many of these cases' success has come through forensics. At the day, that has been the key, and it's been a matter of the science catching up with the crimes. One of the former Lord advocates like to say that justice had no time limit, and that is indeed the case, and it's an important message to continue to give hope to families out there whose crimes remain unsolved, that the time will come when they will see justice. And some of the timeframes in relation to recent successes going back to the 1970s continues to reflect that they must not lose hope, and it's through the professionalism of such teams that we have the results that we have. So thank you on behalf of the Crown too.
Great, thanks very much for that. Okay, and thank you, Louisa, and thank you, Amanda, and do pass on our very best wishes to the Cold Cases team from the committee, so thanks for that. Okay, that then moves us on to, well, actually, we're finished the public session.